Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for another town hall. I'm really excited to be here with you all tonight to give you an update on all the work that we've been doing in Washington and here in Minnesota in our district office, and get into some of your questions later on. But I wanted to do something different tonight. I wanted to start by sharing a little about what the um, what our office actually does, and so we're going to have our case manager, Nikki, join us and give you all just a run through of everything our office can help you in regards to constituent service. Nikki, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure and an honor to be joining you on the live stream tonight.
Great.
Awesome. So I think our comms person is going to add a little bit of our slideshow on the side here. So as the Congresswoman mentioned, my name is Nikki. I'm the Constituent Services Director here in her Minneapolis office. And I wanted to share a little bit about the casework that our office does, some common issues that we help constituents navigate, what the process is, and how you can get in touch with us. If you want to move on to the next slide, please. So first question, what is casework? In short, casework is how congressional offices provide an extra layer of oversight, accountability, and redress when federal laws are being applied. We can help on individual cases when the issue is about how that law is being enacted, administered, applied, rather than when the issue is with the language of the law itself. So like the main question is whether this is an issue that can be solved through a process within a federal agency, or whether it's something that needs to be changed in the law so that way people aren't put in the situation in the first place. Sometimes an issue can be both things, but in general, this is like a pretty good framework to be able to determine whether or not our office might be able to help you out with your issue. Next slide, please. So when can we help? There's two main things that will need to be true in order for one of our caseworkers to be able to assist you. So first of all, you must live in, work in, or else have strong ties to Minnesota's 5th District. So here's some examples of what we would consider a constituent. The first one would be like a person who goes to college out of state, but their permanent address is in Minneapolis. In a second instance, a person lives in Minneapolis, but their father is the one who is subject to federal action. In this case, let's say it's a deportation, because the impact is going to be falling on our constituent here in Minneapolis. We'd be able to contribute to that person's case. Another example, let's say a person lives in Plymouth, but the issue is impacting their business, which is in St. Louis Park, which is in the 5th District. That's something that we'd be able to also help out with. Secondly, you need to have an issue with the federal government that is currently under consideration. So we'll get a lot of questions about like, what sort of immigration application do I submit? Or like, can you help me review my application, make sure that I filled it out correctly? Unfortunately, those are not issues that we're able to help with. We can only really step in when it's a pending, when there's a pending issue already under consideration with the government. So like once you submit that immigration application, if there's some other mitigating circumstance, talk a little bit about those in a minute, we can help you out with that. Something like a denial of a Social Security claim, being unable to get a response from an agency on unemployment. Those are things where you have like an active thing in front of the government that they can respond to specifically. And in those instances, we're able to help. Next slide, please. When can we not help? So if you don't have a pending application or a pending issue, unfortunately, there's not something that we can inquire about. We can, in some instances, ask for like guidance from an agency, but in general, casework is when there's a specific issue and we're going to try to fix that one specific issue. If there's no mitigating circumstance, then we don't really have an avenue or a process to be able to navigate with you to change what's happening. So for instance, a lot of immigration applications take a long time to process. If you're experiencing like financial loss, or you're going to maybe lose your job because of a delayed application, there's like a humanitarian circumstance, Those are all things that are unique in your circumstance that could help us be able to get your case processed more quickly. However, if the issue is just that it's taking a long time, but it's not causing a sort of emergency situation, unfortunately, we're not usually able to help in those instances. I mentioned earlier, if there's an issue with the way a law is written, we can't ask the federal government to break the law when they're trying to administer the law. But we do want to hear about those issues so that our team in Washington can work to change those laws so that you and other people are not put in those situations. If an appeal period has closed, we can always ask the agency if there's a way to reopen that appeal timeline and allow you to submit that for consideration. But if the process has already been offered to you and you were not able to do that for whatever reason, unfortunately, those are things that are difficult for us to be able to help on. If you're not a constituent or if the issue is purely a state or local issue, please feel free to contact us anyway. We can always connect you directly with another office, or depending on what specifically is the issue you're experiencing, if it's something that could set a dangerous precedent for our constituents, the Congresswoman will always want to be able to contribute just to make sure that that our government is setting up precedents that are going to work to the benefit of everyone in our district and in the country. And then if it's a state or local issue, we can always connect you with the local partners. Or, as you can imagine, the federal government has its fingers in basically every pie imaginable. And so we can always connect you with, if we can't take on the case ourselves, we can connect you with the appropriate office who's going to be able to do that. Next slide, please. So what are the common casework issues that we take on? So immigration is far and away the biggest area that we help our constituents. And a lot of the cases that we help on are expediting applications, either due to severe financial loss or due to a humanitarian circumstance. So for instance, if your work permit application is pending and you're missing out on a job opportunity, or you may lose your current job, that is grounds for us to be able to get your case expedited pretty simply. If you need to get a travel document in order to be able to visit a family member who is very sick, or to attend like a funeral procession or something like that, those are also grounds to get those applications expedited. Similarly, if your case has been pending for a long period of time and you don't know what's happening with it and it's outside of standard processing times, please check in with us. We can inquire about the case. Lately, we've seen our Citizenship and Immigration Services office approving applications and then sending them to a warehouse rather than sending them to the next office that actually finalizes stuff. And so it could be that your case is already approved. They just haven't, they just don't know it because it's not filed in the right place right now. We've been doing a lot of cases on unemployment, a lot of cases, especially in the last few weeks, about delayed refunds or third round stimulus payments, or issues with, like, let's say your tax account has flagged you as deceased or has an incorrect name. It's Trans Day of Visibility today, and we've helped a number of trans people ensure that the IRS is not going to dead name them on their financial documents that they're sending through the mail. So if you have ever issues with the IRS, please get in touch with us. If we can't help you personally, we can get you connected with the information that will be able to help you. Next slide, please. And then the last couple issues, so Social Security issues. So if you have like denied payments, denied benefits or payment reductions, small business issues. So like if you have an application with the Small Business Administration or to check on the forgiveness status of your loan, please get in touch with our office. Issues with healthcare, either buying it on MNsure, Medicare coverage, anything in the healthcare realm, please reach out to us if there are issues that you think we might be able to help with. And so in short, we can't guarantee that we're always going to be able to fix your issue, but we will always give it our 110% effort. We will do anything possible to either get that favorable outcome from an agency, get you connected with somebody who's going to be able to help, or else get you the information you need so that you can plan your life accordingly if the federal government is not going to be able to accommodate your specific situation. So if you have any questions, you can reach out to our office. Please check out the Congresswoman's website, omar.house.gov. Our privacy release form is on there, as well as our direct contact information. And with that, I will wrap up my comments today and give it back to the Congresswoman for your regularly scheduled town hall.
Well, thank you so much, Nikki. We really do appreciate the work that you and the rest of our staff does on behalf of our constituents here in the Fifth. And I hope that people have gotten an idea of everything that we can help them with. And maybe that means a little more work for you, which is really exciting.
I love it.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, so I wanted to start by sharing a little bit about what the House and Congress in general has accomplished since my last town hall in February. As many of you know, Congress passed the American Rescue Plan, and it was signed into law earlier this month. That is a $1.9 trillion investment that included some really core priorities. We were able to have $1,400 stimulus checks out to people, $350 billion for state and local governments. We were able to expand unemployment by $300 in unemployment benefits, $160 billion for contact tracing and for vaccine workers. We have been able to get $130 billion to help K through 12 schools reopen safely, so our children are able to go back to schools, and schools that are doing hybrid have the resources that they need in order to juggle some of the challenges they're having. We expanded the foreclosure moratorium until September 30th and provided an additional $30 billion in rental and utility assistance. We were also able to get $5 billion in support for homelessness and working towards ending homelessness. We also just learned that CDC has announced the federal eviction moratorium would be extended through the end of June. This will help protect millions of tenants who have been struggling to make their payments during this pandemic. Earlier this month, our nation suffered through 2 mass shootings within the same week. Our heart goes out to every family and community that has been touched by this, specifically the communities in Atlanta and Boulder who have been impacted directly by these tragedies. As a result of these events, the House was able to pass 2 pieces of legislation to help strengthen our nation's gun laws. I was so pleased and happy to be able to co-sponsor both of those pieces of legislation, H.R. 8, which is our Bipartisan Background Checks Act, and H.R. 1446, the Enhanced Background Checks Act, also known as the Charleston Loophole. It is really a long overdue that we pass these pieces of legislation into law to prevent tragedies like this from ever happening again. If you live in a state where your senator is not supportive of these pieces of legislation, please contact them, because these pieces of legislation have not been voted up and down in the Senate yet. The president has signaled support, and it is time to get it to his desk so that we can have him sign it into law. We were also able to pass in the House the Violence Against Women Act earlier this month. This legislation is a much needed legislation that will help make investment in domestic violence prevention. Sadly, 1 in 3 women still experience domestic violence in our country, and the pandemic has forced many women to quarantine in unsafe domestic situations. The bill included 3 of my amendments that would better track the economic consequences of domestic violence. which we were really excited about. That bill also is still waiting to be heard in the Senate. And so we ask you to call and advocate for it to move through the Senate as well. And lastly, I wanted to give you all an update on some of the legislation that we passed that I highlighted in my last town hall. HR 1 for the People Act that would expand voter access, ensuring a stronger and more exclusive system for all. We know that there is severe threat out in so many states to people who are getting their voting rights challenged. And so this piece of legislation really is an important piece of legislation that will help expand people's access to the ballot box. We were also able to pass the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act that addresses police misconduct, racial bias, excessive force in policing. And I had the honor of presiding over the floor doing the voting for that piece of legislation. Next, I'd like to inform you all about some legislation we have introduced in my first 3 months. We reintroduced the PAUL Act that would strengthen the Foreign Registration Act and make sure lobbyists representing foreign countries act in good faith and operate with full transparency. That piece of legislation was included in HR 1 and it was able to pass the House. We also introduced the Rent and Mortgage Cancellation Act that would be a nationwide cancellation of rent and mortgage payments through the duration of the pandemic. It would instead create a fund with HUD that would help pay landlords and mortgage holders. We've also introduced the Zero Waste Act and End Pollution Welfare Act to address the climate crisis. And just this past week, we introduced the Healing Act that would set aside $11 billion within the Community Development Block Grant Program for historically disinvested communities. So if we move on to highlighting some of the events and activities that we've been able to partake in the last month, we had the ability to visit a once in a lifetime program that has been started here in Minnesota. We were able to stop by the Avivo Village. It's a tiny homes community shelter in Minneapolis that is working to end homelessness. We got an opportunity to see how they were able to utilize some of the CARES Act resources that we released back in last March to be able to create this tiny homes community that currently has about 22 people who have experienced chronic homelessness, and it has the capacity to house over 100 people. And their work really is about getting these community members into stabilized housing. And we look forward to seeing other communities adopt similar models in our effort to end homelessness once for all. We also got an opportunity to get a tour by the lead project managers at the Met Council for the Blue Line extension. And stopped by some of the significant stops where the routes would go through to bring accessibility to the Northwest Metro, specifically the accessibility that would be created for communities in North Minneapolis. We also had the pleasure of visiting 3 schools in my district this month. We visited 2 virtually, and yesterday I got to go into one in Robbinsdale in person. We had an opportunity to meet 4th graders at Park Terrace Elementary in Spring Lake Park, the amazing 2nd graders from Lucy Laney Elementary School in North Minneapolis, and then the one that I mentioned in in Crystal, not Robbinsdale, but Crystal Neal Elementary, where we were able to also meet the superintendent of the Robbinsdale Public School District to discuss the recent funding that they have received through the American Rescue Plan and how they're implementing that as they think about planning their summer program to help offset some of the in-schooling missed opportunities that our children have faced. We also got an opportunity to visit Roots Community Center. They are doing some really amazing work over in North Minneapolis. They are the only Black-owned and operated birth center in Minnesota, and one of only 5 in the country. And we got to witness the birth of a baby girl. So that was really wonderful. And lastly, I would like to highlight my travel to the southern border to meet with refugees and asylum seekers with Representative Castro and other members of Congress. The children that we were able to meet there provided a reminder for us that the situation at the border and the children that are coming to our border shouldn't be politicized, and we shouldn't be playing games with their lives. This is about children, some as young as toddlers, who have been forced to flee unspeakable violence in their countries and deserve to be treated with basic humanity. Some of the children that we spoke to were still traumatized. Many of them feared for their lives in their home countries. Some have lost family members to violence, and they're here because they are seeking asylum and looking for a shot at the American dream. A lot of them have family members here already that they're looking to reconnect, that they haven't seen and have been separated from for a really long time. And so to me, this really is a reminder that we have a moral and legal responsibility to provide that opportunity for these kids, and it's also the ethical thing to do. This is an issue that's very personal for me, and will continue to push this administration to keep their promise of treating these children humanely. The images that we are seeing in some of these border holding centers, these places that they're keeping children really are horrendous. It's unacceptable, and we should not let up our outcry and our demands for there to be a humane treatment of these children. And now, for the remainder of the time, I would love for us to get into some of the questions that you have sent in, and some of the questions that are still coming in. One of the first questions we have received is, what are you doing to address the recent hate crimes towards the Asian community? We have seen an uptick in anti-Asian incidents in the past year, mostly against women. It's important for us to remember that an attack on one of us is an attack on all of us. Historically, minority communities have been pitted against one another. The model minority myth that keeps us apart is rooted in white supremacy. It's an idea that continues to divide communities rather than unite. Together, we must denounce all forms of white supremacy and bigotry and misogyny and patriarchy, and capitalism that helps fuel some of the hate that we are seeing in our communities. That's why I co-sponsored Representative Grace Ming's resolution to condemn all forms of anti-Asian hate. I'm also co-sponsoring Representative Raja Krishna Murthy's bill, the Hate Crimes Commission Act of 2021, to study the rise and stop hate crimes. In order to make our community safe, we must stand in solidarity together to fight against racism and hate, and not target one another. And today, we were able to have a press conference. We were joined by leaders of the AAPI community. We were also joined by Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan, and leaders of the Native American community, leaders within the Jewish community. So grateful for Representative Frank Hornstein and City Council member Steve Fletcher for joining us. Today is also Trans Visibility Day. And so our dear friend, City Council member Philippe Cunningham also joined us for the press conference to speak about how hate towards one community is really a signal that there is hate in many communities, and we have to do this work together. We were also joined by Representative Samantha Vang and County Commissioner Irene Fernando, who are both members of the AAPI community, and who spoke of their own experiences and the work that they are doing in fighting back against hate within their own communities. But by and large, as elected officials, it is important that we see the intersectionality of the hate that we are all experiencing, and how we can work together to root it out. Our next question asks what's happening on immigration and what we are doing to help asylum seekers at the southern border. Last week, the House was able to pass the Dream and Promise Act, which would offer a pathway to citizenship for Dreamers, TPS holders, and DED recipients. Sometime in the next few months, we hope to have more clarity on what will happen with President Biden's more ambitious immigration bill, which I think we're calling it the Citizenship Act, which will help provide a pathway to citizenship for millions of undocumented people in our country. None of these bills are obviously comprehensive or perfect, but they will help get us towards they help us take a step towards creating that path in the right direction to eventually get it right. I'm working in close collaboration with other progressives in Congress to improve them when we're giving the opportunity to do so, once these bills are moving in the House. There's a lot of moving parts, especially in the Senate. So I am not able to offer a clear timeline on when some of these bills will become law, but we'll continue to push. There is lots of energy within the Democratic Party around moving significant immigration bills in this Congress. And I believe this is the time when members of our community, like those of you who are joining us today, should help us push by making phone calls to other representatives in your area and senators, so that we can help pass these bills into law. We also need a coordinated push to ensure these bills are improved and don't contribute to the criminalization of immigrants. And I look forward to hearing from all of you on what some other priorities are around immigration that we should be thinking about. So while I might not be able to fully tell you what the final versions of these bills will be, I can tell you that we're going to be working really hard to make sure that these bills get done as soon as possible, and to make sure that they are the best bills that we can pass into law. As an immigrant, I know how just broken our immigration system is, and how much work it's going to take for us to fix it. Let's see. What is happening with the third round of stimulus payments is our next question. That's a really good question. Congress included a third round of stimulus payments in the American Rescue Plan. This time, payments of $1,400 will be sent to adult dependents, which is a major expansion from the first two rounds. That is a really big win for all of our communities. The IRS has made good progress for millions of Americans, but I know that many are still waiting on theirs. And so if you have not received yet, as Nikki said earlier, our office can help with that process. So don't hesitate to reach out to us. The Social Security Administration for weeks didn't send the IRS account information for people to get their Social Security, and that's why over 30 million Americans have waited 4 weeks to get their stimulus checks this time. Congress has stepped in and got the Social Security Administration to release this data within 24 hours, and payments have been able to go out. You're able to check the status of your payment by using IRS's Get My Payment tool, and you can go to irs.gov, and it's the first link that you see when you go on there. If you can't get the status of your payment through the IRS website, you can again contact our office, and our staff will help assist you. One thing that I forgot about who is eligible is that mixed status families are also eligible for the first time to receive the stimulus checks. We're also helping work with people who are experiencing homelessness in accessing their checks. So if you know someone who needs support, who might not have access to this live stream, please connect them with our office so that we're able to help them. Okay, what type of funding did the K through 12 education system receive under the American Rescue Plan Act? Okay, that's a really good question, and that's what some of our visits in the district have been about with different school districts lately. When President Biden signed the American Rescue Plan earlier this month, the U.S. Department of Education announced the estimated amount of local education agencies, the LEAs, under elementary and secondary school emergency relief fund that each state, Puerto Rico and the District of Columbia will receive. The funding will give schools the resources they need to reopen safely for in-person instruction and address the significant impact the pandemic is having on the students' education and their well-being. The state of Minnesota is estimated to receive 1.3 trillion, a little over 1.3 trillion dollars, specifically for K through 12 education. The public school districts within my congressional district in CD5 will receive about $235 million. each local educational agencies that receive funds would be required to reserve 20% of their allocated funds for activities to address learning loss due to the pandemic. And one of the school districts that we visited, the Robbinsdale School District, was talking about how they are expanding their summer school programming from serving 1/3 of their students in a traditional year to serving all students within the school district. So that's how they're utilizing their funds and helping address the learning loss that has been due to the pandemic, which is really exciting. What type of funding was allocated towards housing is our next question. As I've said earlier, the American Rescue Plan had a little over $40 billion in regards to support for housing. 27.5 billion of that money went to support renters during the pandemic. The funds were authorized for emergency rental assistance programs, new emergency housing choice vouchers, housing counselors that provide services for those in foreclosure and eviction mitigation, the Indian Housing Block Grants Program, and the Indian Community Development Block Grants Program to help Alaska Natives, Native Americans, and Native Hawaiians with pressing housing needs during the pandemic. $5 billion went to support people who are experiencing homelessness through the Emergency Solutions Grant Program. This funding will enable state and local governments to finance housing and health-related services for the homeless, including acquisition of hotels and motels to serve as transitional and permanent supportive housing. 10 billion to support homeowners during the pandemic to address the ongoing need of homeowners by providing direct financial assistance for mortgage payments, property taxes, property insurance, utilities, and other housing related costs. 20 million to support fair housing. These additional resources will be provided to community housing organizations to address fair housing inquiries, complaints, investigations, and education and outreach activities doing or related to the COVID-19 pandemic. So there's just a lot of support in regards to housing. If you are in need, get in touch with your local municipality, with your state, with housing agencies, with advocates. There should be support for you. Many of the rental assistance that's provided could be backdated all the way to March. Specifically here in Minnesota, I don't know about other states, but in Minnesota, you can get assistance for rent that you missed all the way back to the start of the pandemic. There's no limit to the amount that is paid out, and so there are no caps in regards to the amount of rent that will be paid. So that's more flexible and helpful than some of the stuff that we've been able to do with previous packages under the last administration. Will K through 12 students continue to receive meals as we transition into the summer? That's a really good question. This month, USDA Food and Nutrition Services announced the extension of several nutrition nationwide waivers that will allow all children to continue receiving nutritious meals this upcoming summer when children are out of session. The waivers are under the current authority Congress provided in the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. The extension was previously set for June 30th, 2021, and it's now available through September 30th, 2021. Meals served through summer food service programs and seamless summer option programs are to be made available in all areas at no cost. And many of these meals programs are available to children and their families for pickup now and through the summer. Another food-related question, are SNAP benefits going to increase? The U.S. Department of Agriculture announced earlier this month a 15% increase in SNAP benefits through September. This provides an estimated $3.5 billion to households experiencing food insecurity during the pandemic. 15% increase in SNAP benefits will provide about $28 more per person per month, and more than $100 more per month for a household of four, in addition to their SNAP benefits. The bill also funds partnerships with restaurants to feed American families and keep workers in the restaurant industry on their jobs. Okay. Is there an update on the increased amount for child tax credit? That's also a really good question. There will be an increase in the child tax credit from $2,000 per child to $3,000 per child, $3,600 for a child under the age of 6, and make children who are the age of 17 a qualifying child for the year. This will certainly make a difference for families of more than 1.1 million children here in Minnesota, in our state. And so that's a really big and exciting part of the American Rescue Plan. And it is set to help really cut child poverty into half. So it's really an exciting development, and something that we were able to get in the American Rescue Plan. This is a fun question. Will we be hosting the art competition this year? Yes, we are. We certainly are hosting the art competition this year. I am excited to be able to host my third congressional art competition this year. The national competition has been held since 1982, which is the year I was born, selecting virtual art from every U.S. House district for display in the U.S. Capitol for a year. The theme for this year's CD5 art competition is connecting across isolation. This year, I encourage students to think about how they have been able to find community despite their usual, despite this unusual circumstances. What does connection through isolation mean to you? This competition is open to all high school students who are attending school in Minnesota's 5th district. The deadline to submit your artwork is Friday, April 23rd by 5 p.m. And for more information, please reach out to our office at mn.info@mail.house.gov or 612-333-1272. All right, we have a question about vaccinations. How can people get vaccinations? As of this week, as of today, actually, all Minnesotans over the age of 16 are eligible to get vaccinated. The governor has directed healthcare providers to still prioritize those who are at high risk for COVID-19, the elderly and those with specific health conditions, and essential workers. There are still many people who want a vaccine, then there are vaccines available. So if you are healthy and able to work from home, we hope that you'll be patient and you'll allow those who are more vulnerable to get vaccinated ahead of you. I have been able to get my vaccinations. I've gotten both of my dosage. I felt a little uncomfortable in being in a priority category when Congress was put ahead of everyone, and I waited until many in my own community was able to get the vaccine available to them. And so now that availability has increased and many of those vulnerable in our communities have been able to get theirs, I've decided to get vaccinated and help share that with people so that they know it's safe and accessible and necessary part of us fighting against this pandemic and going back to having some normalcy in our lives again. If you haven't signed up for the Minnesota Department of Health Vaccine Connector at the vaccineconnector.minnesota.gov, they will email you. You can go there and sign up. And they'll be able to email you and let you know if you've been selected for a vaccine through the state system. You should also make sure that you have a MyChart account through your health provider. That's another way to get connected to vaccinations. Many pharmacies in the area are also taking appointments like Walgreens, Hy-Vee, Cup, and CVS. So we hope that you will be able to utilize all of those connections and get yourself vaccinated and help connect to those in your community who might not get this information from me today, and learning a little bit more about how they can access that vaccination. Let's see if we have any more questions coming in. Oh yeah, so this week is Infrastructure Week, and we are just learning the details of the administration's infrastructure plan. I am excited to see some of the things that are being proposed in the plan, and really applaud the administration for continuing to propose solutions to the deep challenges we face as a nation, mobilizing the country to address the climate crisis, confronting centuries of systematic racism, and creating millions of good paying jobs, which are really essential parts of our democracy. But I believe that it's important for us not to waste this historic moment. In addition to some of the proposals that the president laid out, we must use this moment to dramatically lower the cost of drug prices, expand Medicare to millions of people, make sure college is affordable, strengthen the care economy, provide a roadmap to citizenship, address the housing crisis that we have, and make sure that there is a bolder investment that's being made in creating green jobs. I think the American people are really ready for us to go big and be bold in this particular time, and we're going to continue to push the administration to go big and be bold. So keep sending in your questions. Okay, that's a really good question. What is our foreign policy to help stabilize Central American countries so that people aren't forced to flee their homes in the first place? I think we as a nation have a choice to make. We can double down on the cruelty of the Trump administration that falsely fans the flame of hate against immigrants, or we can show basic humanity and treat the root causes of migration in the region. That means ending a cruel foreign policy that arms the very state actors who are fueling the migration crisis. It means investing in civil society groups and multilateral entities that can bring stability in the region. It means protecting the safety of migrants who are forced to flee and giving them a righteous and fair path to citizenship. I often hear so many people say, get in line. And many people forget that we have actually dismantled the line. We haven't really had a functioning system where there is a proper line for people to access immigration and seek asylum within our borders. We have zeroed out the number of refugees we are bringing into our country. We've messed up the family reunification processes. We have messed up the process of seeking asylum and have turned our back on our own laws and international laws that protect the rights of migrants and refugees. We have allowed for policies within Central American countries to exist where people are living in violent situations that we helped create and are dealing with impunity from state actors and law enforcement that we have trained and armed. I've seen this with my own eyes when I went to Honduras years back. We have allowed our companies to go into and uproot indigenous communities for the sake of investment and development. And there is a lot that we have to do, and I don't know if the plan right now that exists with the vice president and the task force that she's going to lead is to actually address all of that, or if it is just to have a conversation with the leaders of these countries on how to actually stop people from coming in. Because I don't think unless we address why people are leaving, we should be telling people that they can't leave, because people are living in really unsafe situations, and we have an obligation to help those who are exercising their international right to seek asylum. Are you, let's see, are you going to attempt to lower the Medicare age to 60 years old? Yes. So along with Bernie Sanders and the Progressive Caucus, we have been fighting to make sure that the Build Back Better plan includes expanded an expansion of Medicare, so that more people are able to access quality health care. You know, there is a big fight we have undertaken in advocating for Medicare for all in Congress. You know, it was a piece of legislation that had at one point not too long ago only 30 members as co-sponsors within the Democratic Party, and now half of the Democratic caucus is on that piece of legislation. But we have a long way to go before we can get everybody on board and have the ability to pass Medicare for all, because we know essentially that is the most important piece of legislation that we can pass as members of Congress. And it's going to take a lot of work to convince the rest of our caucus to be able to say yes, and then to get it through the Senate and find a friendly administration that will sign it into law. And in the meantime, because we know that so many people are living with the pain of not having healthcare in our country, that we must do everything that we can in getting them the resources that they need. So we'll continue to do that. Let's see, I think we have time for one or two more questions. Is there any news on student debt cancellation? The Biden administration recently expanded the moratorium on student loan interest and collection, and canceled student debt for 41,000 borrowers with disabilities. These are, I would say, very welcomed changes, but they don't go as far enough as we need them to go. I have been calling on the administration to fully cancel student debt, because we know that is a really wise economic policy to engage in. We've let a letter with Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Senator Elizabeth Warren and Ayanna Pressley in the House, calling for a significant cancellation of $50,000 The president has the ability to do this with just the stroke of a pen, and I hope he does that. We know that the president has said that if we send him a bill of canceling $10,000, that he will sign that into law. But having legislation go through Congress that we know might not have the ability to pass through the Senate is basically saying you're not willing to do anything. And so we will continue to pressure him to use his executive order to use an executive order with his executive power to cancel student debt, because it is a really important legislation. It's really important policy. So many Americans desperately need that relief, and the legislative process at the moment doesn't support it because we don't have enough members of Congress and enough members in the Senate who will vote even canceling 10,000. And so we have to continue to pressure the president to be able to do that. And so I know Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Senator Elizabeth Warren had just released a video asking everybody to make a call to the administration, asking and urging and demanding the president cancel $50,000 of student debt. And so I hope that you all are hearing that call and will flood their phones to be able to get this done. And with that, I just wanted to say thank you all for joining. These town halls are not as fun and as engaging as they would have been if we were in person together, and we could have follow-up questions from you and really actually address some of the serious concerns and questions that you have. And it just feels like there's a barrier to us communicating about some of the things that I'm working on and some of the things that you care about, that you want us to prioritize and to work on. And so I'm hoping soon, maybe with warmer weather, we can do this outside and in person. But I really do miss the ability to be in a room with folks to do this. And so, as many of you know, we do our coffee and Kulan conversations as well from the official side. And so I hope you will join us for those conversations. They're less of an update and less about general topics, more about really getting deep into policy discussion on a piece of legislation that's either moving here in Minnesota or on a federal level that we do get the opportunity to discuss and break it down for you with other champions who are carrying the mantle for that piece of legislation. It's an honor to represent you. It's an honor to go to Washington every day to fight on your behalf. And I just feel humbled and thankful and honored to get the opportunity to do so. So don't hesitate to reach out to our office, because our office is your office. And we look forward to seeing you next month for another town hall. Bye, everyone.